Deep in the South Atlantic Ocean, 800 miles north of the Antarctic Circle, the Falkland Islands are one of the most remote places on Earth. The population of around 2,500 people, mostly descended from pioneer sheep farmers, are proud of their British links, but they also have a strong sense of what it means to be a Falkland Islander. The Reverend Richard Hines has been an important part of this community for the past 7 years, and as retirement beckons, he's savouring every last moment of his time here.
It's been a wonderful experience to live in the Falkland Islands. There's something about the Falkland Islanders that I admire. They're independent and resourceful. They've had to be.
It's winter in the Falklands, and over 30 years after the war with Argentina, the islanders' sense of gratitude towards those who came to their aid is as strong as ever.
When somebody takes your country away from you and suddenly you get it back, it is very difficult to describe the emotions of that actually happening.
And there's a vacancy at Stanley Hospital, and local doctor Becky Edwards is torn.
I always had the end game plan progressing to the Chief Medical Officer role, but it would mean quite a change to us.
At this time of year, the waters surrounding the Falklands are icy cold, perfect for the many sea mammals who inhabit these shores. Their layers of blubber and excellent circulatory systems allow them to frolic in the waves and wallow in the shallows, seemingly oblivious to the chill. Human beings have the same core body temperature as seals and dolphins, but without any of the adaptations to keep us warm, plunging into these subantarctic waters is definitely not advised. But today, a bunch of foolhardy souls, including the rector of the Falklands, the Reverend Richard Hines, are preparing to do just that.
Midwinter in the South Atlantic, which means only one thing. At 11 o'clock this morning, at least 300, perhaps more people, very few of them Falkland Islanders, but visitors and mad people like me will take a quick dip in the South Atlantic Ocean, which today, I'm reliably informed, is about 4 degrees. And I'm getting myself all geared up psychologically and sartorially. Got my T-shirt on, the one for the occasion. Woolly hat to cover me with. No such thing as fashion police in the Falkland Islands. You dress to keep warm. My welly boots, because it's easier to slip on with the socks when you're freezing cold and you want to get warmth. The secret is speed, layers, nerve.
One person who isn't tempted by this annual icy escapade is Richard's wife, Jen.
Well, he is earning his certificate of lunacy by going for the midwinter swim. And it is sheer lunacy that to immerse your body in that, in the South Atlantic in midwinter, you have to be crazy.
I'm away.
Oh, my love.
Bye-bye. I hope to see you again.
Don't say that. Of course you will. Rotter.
Somebody told me to spread over my body vegetable fat. They were quite serious. They thought I should coat myself all over, a bit like I was going to swim the channel or something.
But Richard's not going into this alone. Moral support is coming from Stanley Vet and experienced midwinter swimmer Steve Pointing.
I don't think you can call it a midwinter swim if you just run into the water and then turn around and run out, never having taken your feet off the bottom of the, off the ground. So I like to say, I like to do half a dozen strokes of something or another to say I've actually actually swum, rather than just run into the sea and run out of the sea again. I've never been swimming with Richard before, so I have no idea whether he's a good swimmer or not, but I'm sure he can manage half a dozen strokes and not drown. If not, I'll stand beside him and make sure he can do it. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Are you a keen swimmer?
I wouldn't call myself a keen swimmer, but I can cope. I can stay afloat. Oh, I don't like the look of all that spray bouncing up over the... That means there's a bit of a swell on the ocean.
The midwinter swim is taking place at Surf Bay, the nearest beach to Stanley. And there's always a good turnout of soldiers from the nearby Mount Pleasant military base.
Do you know what temperature the water is?
No idea. It's going to be cold, though. Pretty certain of that.
It's one of the top 3 community activities in the Falklands. You know, middle of winter, we've only got 6 hours of daylight, so go and do something obscure.
I've seen bear suits, I've seen soldiers with their nankinis on. Famously, one year there were a group of Gurkha soldiers down here. They had very small little swimming trunks on, I think about a dozen of them, linked arms, nothing more than just a little swim trunks on, and they walked in together, marched slowly, and they didn't flinch, and they hit the water and straight in, as you'd expect from Gurkhas.
At this time of year, the perils of the sea can't be ignored. With temperatures hovering just above zero, sailors falling overboard have died after being immersed for only a few minutes. So the midwinter swim is not to be taken lightly. Stanley and East Falkland account for over 90% of the entire population of the Falkland Islands. But there's a local saying that west is best, and if it's the quiet life you're after, then this is the place to be. Mile upon mile of unspoilt mountain and moorland, with only a few tiny settlements dotted around the coast. Sheep farming still dominates the economy here. Critter Lee and his family run the island's largest farm at Port Howard. Critter's wife, Becky Edwards, has lived here most of her life.
Let's go and feed them. Come on then, Jessica, Daniel, who are you going to feed?
And their 3 children have grown up on the family farm.
She loves milk. That's her favourite thing.
As well as looking after their 3 kids and helping out on the farm, Becky has another important job.
Daniel, yeah, is there water in there? Yeah. Oh!
She's a doctor who works part of the year in Stanley and spends a lot of time travelling to see patients in far-flung corners of the islands. So Becky's a frequent flyer on the government-operated air service, whose 10-seater islander planes hop from isolated farm to settlement.
We're going to check your blood pressure today, aren't we? OK, Oscar, that's up a little bit today. Not terribly high, but it is up a little bit today. You end up seeing quite a few people for various bits and bobs. They'll save up a few aches and pains and a few bits and pieces for when they see me. 125 on 75.
So that's okay?
Boringly normal.
Oh,
beautiful.
Such a boring person.
I think this has got to be one of the highlights of working in the Falklands. I mean, coming out to on the camp visits is lovely. You get to see all sorts of people you haven't seen for a while. Oh, well, that's all right. Good for another year.
Yeah.
But they're a pretty tough bunch out here, really. They're used to living in quite an isolated place with no access to medical care, so when they turn up, you do have to take them quite seriously. If they're saying they've got an ache, it must be quite a bad pain.
I've cut myself on the shin.
Okay. But you might need some antibiotics for that. Can you move your hands all right? Yeah. Okay.
At the moment, family life comes first for Becky.
Oh, we got some nice spuds here. Some little gold nuggets.
But there's a big change on the horizon.
Oh, I thought there were about 3.
The Stanley Hospital is looking for a new chief medical officer, a position that would require her to live full-time in the capital. Becky is the first homegrown woman doctor on the Falklands, and she would also be the first islander to be appointed to the top job, all of which makes it an opportunity that's very hard to turn down.
I always had the end game plan as being, hopefully one day, progressing to the chief medical officer role. But I thought perhaps that might be another 3 or 4 years away. It's just all happened a bit sooner than I was anticipating. But it would mean quite a change to us, because obviously I'd have to be in Stanley pretty much full time, whereas at the moment I'm working a lovely flexible time. The children would have to sort of spend quite a lot more time in Stanley, and likewise I'd have to spend a lot of time in Stanley without them, so it would be not something to step into lightly. So hopefully we can still keep the balance right for them, even if I'm in Stanley through the week and Critter and I are just sort of catching up at weekends, you know.
Okay, make that I can't eat it very quickly.
Why can't you eat it very quickly?
Because it's got turkey. It's not turkey, it's chicken.
This time of year in Stanley has a particular resonance. The Falklands War was fought and won during the winter months. In many ways, the conflict was a turning point for the islands. Since then, new opportunities and investment mean that the economy has boomed and the population has grown. But no one will ever forget the sacrifices made by the soldiers, sailors and airmen who came halfway around the world to fight for their freedom. 30 years on, there's a permanent military base on land, and the Royal Navy also maintains a constant presence at sea, patrolling the waters around the islands, both to reassure and deter. HMS Clyde is an 81-metre offshore patrol vessel with a crew of 42. She's been on duty in the Falkland Islands since 2007. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Oakley is the ship's captain.
Pick up the 180 leg here, Mom, and turn to port at the end of the leg to pick up the nav track to Stanley.
What we're doing at the moment is we're getting ready to sail the ship round to Stanley as support of Liberation Day, because it's Liberation Day on Saturday. We're going there to take part in the parade and obviously act as a backdrop to all the events that are going on in Stanley over the weekend. So my crew at the moment are running around, flashing up the engines, checking all the equipment on board, testing the radios, testing the guns, making sure they're all working properly.
The time now is 1340 Papa. Good afternoon, Clyde. This is the ops officer on the bridge. Stand by to carry out SOCs. Man overboard.
We'll be at anchor in the bay in Stanley, so any of the local population can go out and see us. We'll be there, it'll be very visual, and also we will be able to interact with the community. They'll see us in the parade. It's a very friendly community, very welcoming, clearly very supportive of the military in general and the Royal Navy, and particularly HMS Clyde. The islanders see HMS Clyde as their ship. We are the Falkland Islands patrol vessel.
Going at a speed of 12 knots, it will take about 4 hours for the Clyde to travel the 45 nautical miles into Stanley. She's due to arrive at dawn on June 14th, which every Falkland Islander knows as Liberation Day. On that date in 1982, British forces retook Stanley, ending 3 months of bloody conflict. And ever since, it's been the day the whole community joins together to remember and give thanks.
It's something that we like to do. Clearly, we look very, very smart in our uniform. Any excuse to get out our medals and parade around, we all like that. Who can resist a sailor in uniform? That's what I say.
Romeo 195.
At Surf Bay, the sun is shining, but that won't help the near-freezing water temperature. For Reverend Richard and his fellow midwinter swimmers, the time is nigh.
How are you feeling, Steve?
Too bad. A little bit cold, but it could be worse. It definitely could be worse.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it, that in a couple of minutes' time, there are going to be 300 plus people undergoing sort of extreme trauma, physiological trauma. It doesn't seem like too much fun when you're taking your gear off and getting ready to go into the water. You think, why on earth am I doing this? But when it comes to the countdown and the screaming as you run towards the water, yeah, you sort of feel like it's fun. It's hearing the shrieks of delight as people go in. It's watching the people's faces, most people's mouths open. I don't remember a lot after I hit the water.
A few seconds later, and it's all over. Mission accomplished. Sort of.
I forgot to do my swimming stripes.
For some, it's so enjoyable they don't want it to end. But most, including the new governor, Colin Roberts, are glad to be back on dry land.
Very refreshing, very Skegness, very bracing, but I think it's time to put on some warmer clothes.
Do you know what? It wasn't too bad.
It was invigorating.
That's a good one.
was cold. It was cold.
It was cold. We survived.
Don't forget to pick up your certificates of lunacy.
No, come
There you go, well done.
Thank you very much.
This is my certificate of lunacy for having swum today at latitude 54 degrees south and longitude 57 degrees west.
You submerged your body under the pounding waves of Surf Bay, Falkland Islands, showing no fear of the hungry sea lions, inquisitive porpoises, and the ever-present marauding penguins that do roam the coastline and threaten our brave bathers. Signed by the Governor.
All that's left now is to call home, where Jen is waiting by the phone.
Hi, just to let you know I survived. It was chilly, but it was okay. We did well. Jen's pleased, she's still got a husband.
This was Richard's third midwinter swim, and sadly, it'll be his last.
What a marvellous idea. I'd forgotten about the fires.
He's only got a few weeks left on the islands before he retires, and he and Jen return to the UK to start a new chapter of their lives. So moments like this are ones he'll treasure forever.
The kinds of things that I've found myself being involved in through being the rector here on the islands have been, really very enjoyable and quite unusual. I guess I will miss them. I think I'll look back and just feel very pleased indeed that I had the opportunity to do them and that people were so welcoming and it was so much fun, really.
In Stanley, at the hospital, the new Chief Medical Officer, Becky Edwards, is midway through her afternoon rounds.
You're all right, then? Are you okay? A bit shaky. A bit wibbly-wobbly. It's a family affair in here, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Becky is one of only a handful of the hospital's 75 staff who are genuine islanders. The majority have come from overseas on 2 to 3 year contracts. So finding and keeping the right team is one of her major challenges in the new job.
We've done all the hepatitis screens, haven't we? Yeah. I wonder if this is as a result of her obstetric cholestasis, actually.
The problem is, there's no university or even sixth form on the Falklands. The government pays for those who want to pursue further education to go back to the UK. But then, of course, there's no guarantee they'll decide to return to the islands for their careers.
It's challenging. There's an awful lot to it. There's an awful lot to do. An awful lot needs to be done. It's very difficult when we are short of staff. It is quite rare for someone from the Falklands to go away, do medicine and then come back, I think. First of all, there's not many that do medicine at all. And two, medicine's such a massive field that not everybody wants to come back to the Falklands and work,
So I'm doing this one.
But you would swap with Dr. Dave, wouldn't you?
Oh, no, I can't do it because I'm going to go on the second.
So with just all of August, it's going to be a 1 in 3, which isn't ideal. I'm in Stanley full-time at the moment and trying to go home for weekends when I can, and the family are toing and froing between Stanley and Port Howard at the moment until we can get some proper childcare arrangements sorted out for them. At the moment, I'm hardly seeing my husband and my kids, but hopefully that'll get better.
When the children are over in Stanley, they stay with Becky at her parents' house.
What would you like? Your favourite?
And tonight, Critter's here too, so it's a rare moment for the whole family to be together.
Becky is still at work. I guess something must have come up, because normally if she's not that busy, she'll ring, but we haven't heard from her, so we're assuming she's busy. Generally, they're pretty good. They sort of they take it all in their stride, like Port Howard to Stanley and stuff like that, which obviously is, it's not an upheaval, but it's all just a bit different for them.
You had a good day? What did you do at school? It's lovely to come home to a noisy house. It's horrid when you come back and no one's here. That's probably been the hardest thing about the job altogether, actually, is just being apart from Critter and the children. Great shape, language. What's that say? Because, I mean, Oliver's only little, yeah, he's only 3, so he's only a little chap. And they grow up so fast that I don't want to miss too much. So, yeah, it's been tough being away from the family and home on West Falklands. That's the drag about it. I mean, I think you have to. This is an opportunity that I've been given here. I mean, whether or not it works out for the long term or not, time will tell. But yeah, you've got to give it your best shot. And I mean, it's something that's important to me. Not just that it's a good job and it's an interesting job and it's a wide and varied job with all the different things that you do in it, but also, you know, it's important to me that I try and do the best I can in this role, because all my family are going to rely on the hospital in Stanley. I'm not going to be going anywhere, moving anywhere else. So it's in my interest that we have a service that's the best we can make it. So, yeah, really trying hard to make it work, and hopefully it'll all come together. Don't get water in the blowhole, said a man. Let the vets see it. There they are, look. Oh, it's smiling again now, that dolphin. Oh, it's really smiling now. The rescue team took the dolphin.
All over the Falkland Islands, memorials and cemeteries commemorate individual battles and lives lost during the 1982 war. The Blue Beach Cemetery at San Carlos on East Falkland is where 14 British soldiers were buried. This is where troops first came ashore to begin the main assault to retake the islands. San Carlos water became known as Bomb Alley because of the constant fire they came under from low-flying enemy jets. This cemetery near Darwin is dedicated to the many Argentine soldiers who died in the conflict. And a few miles further south at Goose Green is the memorial to the men of 2 Para, who fell during the fierce fighting here. Many of these monuments are looked after by islanders living nearby, who take it upon themselves to maintain them and mark each individual anniversary. But every year, on June 14th, the islanders unite to remember Liberation Day and give thanks for victory. Steaming into Stanley Harbour, ready to play her part in the day's events, is HMS Clyde, under the command of ship's captain Sarah Oakley.
232, 242, 242, and 284.
Apart from the ship being anchored in the bay, 15 sailors parading through the town, it will be a very visual spectacle. Sailors always look very smart in their #1 uniform, so I'm hoping that they'll catch the eye of all the people in Stanley.
As she navigates these waters, seeing and being seen by islanders and potential enemies alike, the Clyde is a very visible declaration of the island's sovereignty. For the 42 men and women who serve on her, there are different uniforms for different duties. An important ceremony like today's calls for #1 dress, which dates back to the 18th century, the golden age of the Royal Navy, when Britannia really did rule the waves.
So you've got the jacket, or as we call it, a jumper, which has our own badges, medals, and then you've got the blue collar, which is famous around the world. 3 stripes signify the 3 battles of Nelson, and basically it used to keep the tarred ponytails off the uniform back in Nelson's times.
Just preparing my uniform for the parade. The final bit is putting my medals on, so I like to keep them safe. Just put them on the uniform at the last minute.
The ship's captain is going ashore with a troop of sailors and 2 officers, leaving her ship in the capable hands of her second-in-command.
She's just a permanent reassurance around the islands that, you know, for as long as we wish to remain British, we will be British.
The Liberation Day parade starts at the eastern end of the seafront. As the senior service, the sailors of the Royal Navy lead the march, and they're followed by troops from the Army and Air Force, as well as a detachment from the Falkland Islands Defence Force. Today is a public holiday, so islanders young and old have gathered at the 1982 War Memorial in full view of HMS Clyde anchored out in the bay.
The Clyde is a very special ship for Falkland Island. It's a job of reassurance. It's here to show that the British government, the Royal Navy, is around and about and it goes around the islands, and it's a very popular ship. People love to see it.
Parade! Royal salute! Present! On!
Good morning and welcome to you all on this, the 32nd anniversary of the 1982 liberation, and we offer our prayers together and make our solemn act of remembrance. There's something very profound and very tragic about warfare. I think we remember it as a very sobering recollection of what human life is all about, to the depths to which we sink sometimes in conflict, the heroism and the kind of self-sacrifice that it draws out of people. It's a reminder, ultimately, I think, about what it is to be human. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
Well, the HMS Clyde is a sign of freedom for people in the Falkland Islands, and definitely for me personally. To be liberated so quickly was just unbelievable, and you cannot describe how it's... When somebody takes your country away from you and suddenly you get it back, it is very difficult to describe the emotions of that actually happening.
Absolutely fabulous. It's been really successful. I mean, you can see by the whole community being here, it's an incredibly important part of their lives. The fact that we'll be able to take part in the parade and show ourselves in our uniform, and they can look across the bay and see the ship there. They know that we really are here patrolling the Falkland Islands waters.
Next time, swimming lessons for George the King Penguin.
Well, he's still a reluctant swimmer.
And Reverend Richard prepares to say his final farewell to the Falklands.
I think I've come to the point of accepting that this is a sight that I shall not see for much longer.